If this is your first time seeing one of my videos, I have served 10 years in the state prison system, and I feel like I can give a lot of insight into what the treatment and lifestyle and expectations for Stephan Stearns will be if he's convicted on what he's charged with and sent to prison in Florida. I feel like this is something that a lot of you probably have never considered or thought about before when I really get into the details of how things work in there, especially for someone in his position, which, well, I mean, let's be honest, is not good with the things he's charged with. And if you don't know who that is, Stephan Stearns, I'll do a quick recap and just give you a brief breakdown of what's going on with him. Stephan Stearns is the 37-year-old boyfriend of the mother of Madeline Soto. Now, Madeline Soto is a little girl. She was murdered just hours after her 13th birthday party. Now, Stephan Stearns has not been charged or arrested for her murder, but police have named him the prime suspect. Now, this aside, during the investigation for Madeline Soto, police discovered lots of CP, okay, child images that are not good on his cell phone and other things. I believe 40 counts, 40 photos or images, pieces of material that he should not have. Now, in addition to that, he also has some other terrible charges. I'll put them on the screen right here. This is everything he's charged with right now. So this is what he'll be going to court for, unless he is eventually charged also with the murder of Madeline Soto. We'll just have to see how that plays out. But right now, let's talk about what would happen to him after he goes to court for this, if he gets found guilty and sentenced to prison time. Okay, but also some of the things he's charged with in the state of Florida, he can get the death penalty for. Now, if he gets the death penalty and he goes to death row, that will definitely change my analysis on what I think is going to happen, because when you're on death row, I mean, really, you're very isolated, completely isolated. And I don't really think there's going to be any opportunity for anyone to get to him. If we're talking about, hey, if he goes, is everybody going to want to get their hands on him and beat him up, stab him up, kill him? What? There's not really going to be a lot of opportunities for that on death row, because it's just so isolated and secluded from everyone else. Now, putting that to the side, he can get life in prison, up to life in prison for these charges. How do things work there for guys who have charges like him? All right. Every state prison is different. Does it happen to guys who go in there with these charges? Absolutely. Bad things happen. I think that's what everybody's really wondering here. If you clicked on this video, he's got these charges. They're bad charges. Inmates, no matter what they did, they don't like, especially people who have those kinds of charges. They're going to get them, right? What's going to happen to them? Well, of course, they don't like people with those kinds of charges. But I think a lot of people think there's these like just set in stone rules of, hey, if you go to prison and you do this, then this happens. If you go to prison and you have these charges, this happens. Every time, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's what happens. And that's not true. It really, really depends on who it is, what they did. I mean, the actual specific person, where they're at, the state, the specific prison, which part of the prison, and what other inmates are around this guy. So does it happen? Of course. Does it happen to every single one who goes into prison? No, or else you'd hear about that every single day. There would be none in prison because they'd all just get killed. Right. But it definitely happens. I mean, right here's an article you can see that's pretty recent. The headline here, it was a guy in Florida state prison who was killed, inmate on inmate violence. And he had those kinds of charges. He had child charges, kitty charges, inmates call them. Anything that falls under that umbrella. So yeah, an inmate killed him. Now, here's the thing. You don't know if he killed him for that reason. Same thing with Larry Nassar. It's a bit different. He was in the Florida prison, but not a state prison. He was in a federal prison. So, if Stephan Stearns goes to prison, he definitely won't be in the same prison that Larry Nassar was. But Larry Nassar was that gymnastics coach. It was, widely covered in the news what he did to all those girls and athletes. So he had bad charges, terrible charges, and he got stabbed. He lived, but he got stabbed a lot. And this was recent. This was just last year. But here's the thing. You don't know if that is the reason they got attacked. Because let me tell you something. You can have any charges you want. You can have drug dealing, murder, kidnapping, burglary, shoplifting, whatever. Or you can have kitty charges. All that can be irrelevant. If you go into a bathroom and step on somebody's foot and don't apologize, or just bump somebody's shoulder when you're walking by them and just don't even say excuse me or anything, somebody can beat you up for that. Somebody might pull out a weapon and shank you for that. And so Larry Nassar and this guy, who both had charges you don't want to have in prison, and got attacked. And I bring these guys up for two reasons. Number one, a lot of people think, these people who get covered in the news, he's all over the news. He's infamous. Everybody knows him. And he's got bad charges. The prison staff, they know everybody's going to want to get him. So, he's going to go straight to PC. He'll be in PC. Nothing's going to happen to him. Okay, well, what about this guy who had charges just as bad in Florida, the same state prison system, and he got? Whether he went to PC and still got, or he didn't go to PC and he got. Same thing with Larry Nassar. So either why would Stephan Stearns go to PC? These guys didn't. Or, okay, he does go to PC. So did these guys. They still got. So can Stephan Stearns. So it's kind of irrelevant. Okay, the PC factor here. Number two, if something happens to Stephan Stearns in there, everyone's of course going to assume, knew they'd get him. Can't have those charges in there. And that may very well be the case. That can be the case for all three of these guys. Or it may be he sneezed on somebody's breakfast biscuit in the kitchen. You never know. You never know. Because the fact is, you'll have these guys with these charges that nobody likes. Nobody is okay with that, who doesn't do that type of stuff, even though they're in prison for committing crimes. Look at that however you want. People are still human, and they're going to pass judgment on those charges in there, even though they're in there for whatever they did. Okay. And, not everyone's just going to stand up and volunteer to do something to this guy. Inmates got stuff going on in there. When I say they got stuff going on, these guys have contraband cell phones. These guys have contraband drugs, tobacco, cigarettes, and they work hard and invest a lot of money to get this stuff in so that they can sell it, make profit. These guys have inmates around there who owe them money, and they're waiting on it. It's coming the next week or the next week. These guys have phones they paid hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars, depending on the current economy in that prison for. And they use it every night to talk to their girl or talk to their kids or just be on social media or just listen to music or operate their little business, receive their money, their payments for the stuff that they're selling. These guys have actual stuff going on that's important to them. They're trying to save money, stack money, pay bills for whoever they got on the outside, or just, live a good life in there. They're not just going to throw all that away so that they can beat up this guy or stab this guy, probably get new charges, and then go to solitary confinement and lose everything that they have. Everything that they might have been, working on for weeks, months to get to the position they're in this cell block, in this prison. They're not just going to throw all that in the trash because, hey, I'm going to be the one to get them. Honestly, it's more likely that somebody who has absolutely nothing going on, they're broke, they have nothing, they got nobody, they don't care, they're just scrounging by, just floating through life in there, and they're not even trying to make anything happen for themselves or just do something, every day that matters to them. Truly nothing to lose. They'll probably be the one to do something if they really care. If they really care to go out of their way to do something to him, and then they themselves will end up 9 times out of 10 in a worse position than they already are for doing that. And that's why it doesn't happen that often. It happens, but it's not just it's not just going to happen automatically. And more often than not, nobody's going to do anything. Here's what will happen, guaranteed. Life for him, if you came on this video hoping to hear that, he's going to be killed day one, he's done. And that's what you wish on him, and that's what you want for him. I always say this when I make these kinds of videos. Let me just put something out there for you to consider. If you really want the worst possible outcome for Stephan Stearns, if he's found guilty of all these charges and he's sentenced to a lengthy time in prison, if not life, the worst thing that could happen is having to do that time forever and live in there, especially with the way he'll be treated. Because, hey, you're not going to get in trouble for hating a guy or being mean to a guy or ostracizing this guy from kind of the prison community within that cell block. Because trust me, it is a community and everybody has their place. There is a food chain. There is a ranking system. There is a hierarchy amongst these inmates in any area of any prison you go to. You better believe it. And let me tell you who's at the very bottom. This guy. Guys with these kinds of charges. So even if it's somebody who doesn't beat him up or stab him up or just kill him, he's probably going to be extorted. He's going to be bullied. He's going to be treated like crap. He's going to be a cockroach in there. I mean, he's going to be the lowest of the low. He's scum. Everybody is above you. He will never have any position of power. He will never have any type of influence. He will never be able to get himself in a good position. If he ever has an excess of money or items or canteen, he's likely going to have to give that away or probably get it stolen from him. You know, and it's like, well, isn't that still putting yourself out there as an inmate to where, you know, you said they wouldn't want to stab him and do that. Why would they still go do? Because staff really doesn't. When it comes to that kind of stuff, listen, if you're not doing something to where these guys have to be brought outside of the prison to a outside medical facility, you know, they have life flight in there. They have helicopter landing pads in these prisons. Like guys have to be helicoptered to hospitals sometimes. I mean, they have a small, like, school nurse style medical station at prisons. And, you know, if you're lumped up and need a bandage and some Tylenol for a couple lumps and bruises and a little, you know, bloody nose you got, that's one thing. But if you got holes in you from weapons, I mean, if you are actually fighting for your life, you've actually had like a lung punctured and stuff, and you have to be brought to a real hospital, or worse, you die. That's when prisons, like, now we have to report this. Now this is going to be brought to the media. Now, like, there's a lot of attention. Like, they don't want it to pass that threshold of, well, we can just bandage you up in the old nurses station and send you back to the dorm. They don't want it to get worse than that. So as long as it's anything kind of under that and less than that, they kind of let these cell blocks govern themselves. That's just how it goes. So yeah, more, you know, lesser things like that, just stealing his food and just like bullying him around, and you're never going to be able to, like, you know, get a drag off anybody's cigarette, or you're never going to be able to use anybody's phone unless they're like letting, yeah, okay, you can use the phone, but you better call somebody and like get them to send us some money or something, like, you know, stuff like that. He's going to be pushed around, just looked at like nothing. And that's not a fun existence. Day after day, week after week, year after year, you are treated like trash. A lot of times these guys who are extorting you, or they're like, you know, just kind of pushing you around a little, or just, you know, throwing their weight around with you. And the minute you try to go against that, or like stand up for yourself in the slightest bit, or just act like you're not going to really go with whatever anybody above you tells you to do, then you might see them get beat up. Then you might see them get stabbed. You know, if you give somebody a real reason or really anger them in that way, it's more likely that if you're doing something to disrupt the flow of that cell block community, you know, they already have their justification. You know, prison politics are a thing, and usually you can't just go jump on somebody just because they made you a little mad. I mean, anything other than just to, you know, let's both just, you know, throw some hands, have a little fist fight real quick. But like, you know, there's prison politics, there's gang affiliations, there's, you know, guys who are working with other guys who are important, and they're important to them, and they're getting money in a specific way. And you can't really, you know, if I do something to you, it's going to mess that up. And so these guys are going to be mad. And so you're never really doing something to one guy without it affecting several other guys. And all of this has to really be taken into consideration. When you're talking about somebody like this, who's just a nobody, he's just a peon, you already have your justification. Now, if you give me any other reason that just pisses me off and I just want to jump on you or do anything, nobody's going to care. Like, you're already screwed because of your charges. So That's my take on it. Either way, life is going to be miserable for him. If he gets killed, that's the easy way out, in my opinion. If you want him to just have the worst outcome possible and punishment, I mean, it's probably just getting beat up, slapped around. Oh, he'll definitely be slapped, probably, I'm sure. Beat up, but not extensively to where he's got to go to hospitals and it just becomes an issue for prison staff. And so that kind of fires back and rains back down on the inmates who did it. Inmates know how to do that. They know how to walk that line. They know how to do a little something to you, but not do too much. And so you're kind of going to have to just suffer through that for the long run. Just a long several decades of suffering and being nothing and nobody, lower than everyone. That's what he's got in store for him. Let me know what you thought of the video. Hope I gave you some insight and information that you found useful, and I'll see you next time.